Hi. All right, let's talk about transition stages. This is the first chapter of Larry Temple's Showtime. I'm making reading this chapter optional for you, but you may want to go in there and look at some of the content, look at some of the images, and learn more about these topics. We're going to begin by talking about mid 1800s, so 19th century theater in New York with the Astor Place riot over performances of Macbeth. We're going to talk about the biggest play in the 19th century, Uncle Tom's Cabin, an adaptation of the novel. And we're going to talk about the biggest spectacle of the late 1800s, a show called The Black Crook. So fandoms are a big deal now, and they were a big deal in the 1800s. So in 1849, New York City, you got 500,000 people living there. There's tons of theater options. And one of the most popular actors was Edwin Forrest. He was an American actor, and he was very popular with the working classes. And then, sort of in the other corner, we have William Charles Macready, a veteran English actor that wealthier people liked. He was kind of a diva off stage. And you'll see that, the way people felt about it, there's even a broadside right here. Working men, Americans or English rule. And so, they're angry about it as, who plays Macbeth? So in a very naughty move, Macready came to New York to play Macbeth the same week that Forrest was playing Macbeth. He was pelted with eggs and fruit. I think that's the kind of thing you see on cartoons, but it happened in real life. He said, "I'm going to go back to England." And the rich people said, "No." And he goes back to play it again 3 nights later. He's his emotions have healed or whatever. And there's a riot. And now when I say riot, 22 people died. They attacked the opera house during the performance of Macbeth. The militia came in, and not only did those people die, but 100 people were injured. So, this is a conflict of America versus Britain. It's about class divisions in America. It's also kind of about fandoms, This is similar to a sports riot or conflict like that. This is about my side versus your side in our culture. And it really makes you think, who is theater for? What role, do these hierarchies play in making theater accessible? A lot of us would rather go and see a play in somewhere that's a little more run down maybe, or less glamorous, just to kind of see something authentic and cool. But at the same time, a lot of us would like to go somewhere very fancy and see a play and dress up and have a great night out. They're different feelings, and theater exists in both spaces. So the next kind of major event of 19th century theater in America was Uncle Tom's Cabin. So we know about the novel, and this is a brief rundown of the novel, where we have some central characters. We have Eliza, her son Harry, we have Tom of the title, and so I'll just kind of blow through this quickly. If you know the novel really well, you might not need this. So Eliza, her little son Harry, and Tom are enslaved, and Eliza and Harry run away to avoid being separated, which we know was very common. Someone, the previous owner traffics Tom, and then he's kind of sold or trafficked to a white family he meets on a riverboat, which is really weird, but also shows us how arbitrary a lot of these connections were. And the family he moves in with include a little girl named Eva, whom he saves from drowning. So there's the idea that this might be a better situation. The family's Christian, Tom is too. And so, we're sort of left with that for the moment. Eliza and her husband plan to escape with their child. Then the husband accidentally shoots a white guy, and so they take him to a Quaker settlement, then escape to Canada. The white guy's like, wait a minute, maybe I don't like slavery anymore. So I guess that's cool. One of the really tragic things that happened in it, at least according to the white audience of the time, this little girl, Eva, gets sick, she dies, it's very sad. Her dad is murdered, and then they, resell, traffic Tom to an abusive man named Simon Legree, who is horrible and just, treats Tom terribly. And he almost loses his faith, but he learns to forgive. And this is where, when people call someone an Uncle Tom, you can see where it's sort of about embracing the system of enslavement, in spite of it all. But, a lot of it within the context of the text was about Christianity and Christian forgiveness, which, people ultimately learn are antithetical to enslavement. But that, basically, as with most things, the closer you look, the more different it seems. And Tom looks the other way when some women escape, and then Legree has him killed. Tom forgives his killers as he dies, as one is supposed to, I guess, according to, Christian doctrine. I guess part of the point is that Tom is a better Christian than the white Christians seem to be. The folks who escape, they're all reunited in Canada, and they move to Liberia. And so think about why people wanted to see this happen in front of them. So the musical was the first major play in which other entertainments were eliminated from the program. If you remember, we looked at that playbill from the Beggar's Opera in Williamsburg, Virginia, that still had musical entertainment and an afterpiece, etc. More people saw it as a play or musical than read the book. Like, that's just logic. It was the most popular play in the US or in England from the 1850s until at least 1900. And even though it was a very popular book, people were certainly reading a whole bunch of other books during that time, but this was the most popular play. One reason it was so popular is that because of adaptation copyrights at the time, people could do pretty much anything with it, and it was already a popular story. So some were pro-slavery, some were anti-slavery. That's a real problem. If you go see Uncle Tom's Cabin and you think, hey, things aren't that bad, that's not so great. I will post George Aiken's one. It's the most famous adaptation. It is anti-slavery. It kills off Legree. It's kind at how it portrays Tom. It does add comic scenes, I guess, to lighten the mood periodically. These early plays were done in blackface with some popular songs at the time. So they're kind of descended from this blackface minstrelsy, which we will talk about more as the class progresses. And if you want more information about this show, UVA has a really good site with some primary sources from that time. And that's where I got this image. You'll see that it's in the distance, so the blackface isn't as evident, so I'm more willing to show it. But I mean, they have actual horses. There's like giant frosted trees when they're trying to escape across the river. I mean, this is incredible set design, so you can see why people wanted to see it. But again, it's white performers in blackface for a white audience. So it's a closed loop of social criticism. It isn't opening up the conversation to minority voices. Next, we have The Black Crook, which is not about a black crook. It is probably about someone with dark hair and dark eyes. So this is a whacked out theatrical spectacle from the late 1800s that was based on melodrama and opera and is just the most extra thing you can imagine. Also kind of not great. Charles Dickens saw it, so the Charles Dickens. The people who act in it have not the slightest idea of what it is about. Mark Twain kind of liked that you could see the girl's legs, and he liked that it was very opulent. It's one of those shows that advertised how expensive it was. So if you ever know somebody who loves to talk about how expensive all their stuff is, that's about as tasteful as we're getting with The Black Crook. There's a famous song called You Naughty, Naughty Men, which was sung by the characters while in character. But kind of indicting the audience just a little bit. And a great line from Stemple. The assault on one's senses from the spectacle was rivaled by the assault on one's sensibilities by the dance. It made over $1 million. Imagine in the 1800s. I mean, that's just keep adding zeros to things. That's just unbelievable. And so there's a clip there with a little more information there. There's also a Fairy Queen March. So some stuff still survives that you can listen to. There were 475 consecutive performances, and it became kind of a thing to go and see this. It enticed the middle class with its scandal. So like it's sort of scandalous, but if everyone goes to see it, you can go, that kind of thing. National tour, kind of like when 50 Shades of Grey was scandalous, right? Like people still felt like it was sort of acceptable to go see it because, it was popular enough that, quote unquote, it couldn't be that bad. It wasn't great, but here we are. There was a national tour, so it's kind of similar to a contemporary musical. It becomes popular, it makes a ton of money, it's hard to get tickets, everybody goes to see it, it has a long run, so you can see where it's formative in American musical theater. Here is a nice kind of engraving showing some of the spectacle, some of the costumes, some of the sets. You can see that clearly this is, and some of the legs, you can see that clearly this is an expensive show. So to conclude, the 19th century sees the creation of American theater culture. We see more fan culture, a lot of the conventions that we see today. Conventions meaning, traits or characteristics, not like, Comic-Con. Uncle Tom's Cabin, first major production to occupy the entire evening's entertainment. Seen by more people than read the novel. There were tons of productions because of copyright. Use of blackface by white actors, for white audiences, creating a closed circuit to talk about race. And of course, the novel was by a white woman. Not great. Things do get better, but they don't get that much better. The Black Crook, spectacle and theatricality, more important than, obeying the classical rules of drama. The Black Crook was a massive blockbuster hit touring company, and it was on Broadway at the corner of Broadway and Prince. Sex sells, etc. All right, that's it for the transition stages.